Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for those who have joined us today for the Emergency Response Program's Mental Health and Wellness webinar. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a couple of minutes, so hang tight. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Olivia Heinze, and I'm part of the Generator team. Welcome to our final webinar for this week's Alabama Emergency Response Program. We're really excited for this final webinar and to be concluding this awesome program. Today's topic will be mental health and wellness for small business owners. This program is brought to you today by Generator and our partner, the Browns Valley. The Browns Valley has been incremental in bringing this program to Alabama to help small business owners, and we really couldn't do it without them. So thank you to them. We do have dial-in information for today's webinar if you prefer to call in on your phone. That is available. The phone number is 1-312-626 6799, and then the webinar ID is 760-313-092. We do welcome all questions during today's webinar. We just ask that you use the Q&A function down at the bottom of your screen. We will do our best to answer any questions as they come in, but we will leave the final 15 to 20 minutes of today's webinar for Q&A to be answered by Emily. And if you do have any other questions, feel free to email either myself or Prentice at olivia@generator.com or prentice@generator.com. And just due to the nature of today's webinar and the number of people that are on today's webinar, we will not be able to assist with any technology issues, but we will be recording this webinar and sharing it with all registered attendees for the Emergency Response Program after the webinar. And I'd like to welcome today's speaker. Emily Barbara Prince is going to be giving today's webinar. She is a clinical and developmental psychologist at the University of Miami, and we are so excited for her presentation today. So welcome, Emily. And now I will pass it over to you.
Wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and bring up my PowerPoint. Let's see. All right, is everybody seeing that?
Mhm.
Great. Let's go. All right. So, first, I want to thank you guys so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. I think that it is so important to be considering the mental health aspect of everything that's been going on. And we were talking a little bit about the different, really concrete things that you guys have been working on all week. And I think that this is a really nice addition to thinking about, okay, when can we take a step back and make sure that we're taking care of ourselves during this time that's incredibly stressful for everyone, but especially for people who are managing their own businesses, who are trying to make sure that they're weathering the storm with the rest of us, but also are responsible for other people and their livelihoods as well. So definitely a tricky time, and so I really appreciate everyone who is taking the time to really allow themselves to make space for this, because it's really crucial. So the basic breakdown of what I'm going to be talking about today is going to be separating out your thoughts and your behaviors and thinking about how you can either come at your stress and worry from either one of those angles. So we're going to be talking a lot about how you can shift thinking, but also adjust your behavior. Throughout, my main thing though is going to be kind to yourself. This is an unprecedented time, a time where nobody has all the answers. And so if you are thinking to yourself, oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, oh my gosh, okay, she's listing off a million things to try, let me go ahead and do all of them right now, that's not what this is about. It's about small incremental changes you can make that'll hopefully reduce stress and help you manage worry as you're going through. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we're going through this. So why is it that we're talking about this today? It is so important to care for yourself because your mental health and your physical health are inextricably linked. So we know that if you are in experiencing increased stress, you're also increasing your risk of heart disease, hypertension, all of these health risks that go with it. And then at the same time, your physical health is tied to your mental health. So when you are not feeling great, let's say you get a mild version of the coronavirus or you have allergies because it's spring, those things are going to make it hard for you to keep your mental health going strong. And so the two things are really tied together very closely. So we got to pay attention to it. This is also going to help you avoid burnout. I am not a small business owner, but my father is. I've seen him in this process work himself for many extra hours trying to figure out things that he can be doing, and being able to pull back and stop and do things that are positive for his mental health keeps him from reaching the point of just throwing his hands up in the air, right? Being there for yourself is a way to also be there for others by modeling a clear, I guess, by showing that you are interested in your own mental health and you are setting boundaries appropriately. You're also going to be setting a model for your employees and for the company that you're running, right? By sort of creating an environment that says, okay, this is an important thing to me. I want to be healthy mentally, and I want you guys to be healthy mentally. And you also just deserve it. Sometimes we think, okay, well, these are the reasons I should. It's good for my health. It's good for other people. But also just in the basics of our life, this is the life we have. This is the life that we are going through the world with. And so being happy, being able to manage these things is going to be really important because you want that in your life. So the basic structure that I use when I'm thinking about managing worries and stress and anxiety, and just in general, addressing mood overall, is the cognitive behavioral triangle. And if you think about an event that happens, something that is stressing you out, it can be something big or something small. There's a mix of things going on. You've got the emotions that are tied to it. This could be happiness, sadness, fear, anger. You've got the thoughts that go along with it. So this could be something as simple as, I am so looking forward to dinner tonight, right? It's a thought that you have that goes with the emotion of happiness. Um, and then the behaviors that you're doing. So, okay, I'm cooking something really delicious. And you can break every event down into these thoughts and behaviors. We think about this in stressful situations where you want to think about, like, where is it that we can create change? So, for example, if I am feeling really depressed and um, I have, let's say, heard some really bad news, my emotion is going to be real sadness, some grief, maybe. Um, and then my thoughts are going to be about that, and my behaviors might reflect all of that. And there are times where we think, okay, I just need to stop being so sad, or I need to stop being so angry, or stop being so scared. But if you've ever had somebody tell you, pull yourself together, or, oh, stop being so upset about this, you know that that is the least helpful thing that has ever happened to you. Instead, you have to come at it from another angle. You have to think about, how can we adjust our thoughts, or how can we adjust our behaviors? So I'll give you an example of something that this might look like. So it's the middle of the night and you hear a bang and there's the sound of crashing glass. What are the emotions, the thoughts, and the behaviors that go along with it? So your thought might be, oh my gosh, somebody's broken into my house. The behavior would be, let's call the police, hide under the bed, go grab a bat, basically jump into fight or flight mode. And then the emotion related to that is fear. And so you can see how the thought and the behavior and the emotion are all tied together in that moment, but we can split them apart separately. Now, I recently got a cat. So if it were me, I might think, oh, that stupid cat. And my behavior is instead, okay, I'm going to go back to bed. And I just feel kind of mildly annoyed. Right. And so in this case, the thought that I had really influenced that cascade of behaviors and emotions. And so by changing the thought, I've changed the rest of it. And so we we can use this technique to adjust our behaviors and our emotions if we shift our thoughts. So in this day and age, a cough at a grocery store also may set things off. In a pre-COVID era, the thought might be, ugh, allergies, let's get a tissue. The emotion is annoyed. But this time you might think it's the virus. Let me check my temperature, self-isolate, read all the symptoms online for the 100th time. And the emotion would be fear. And so here you can see that your thoughts can influence everything, and sometimes those thoughts can end up building. So you can think about it like a worry chain. So you think, oh, I have a headache. Is this a symptom? It's probably the virus. I'm going to have to go to the hospital. The hospital won't be able to help me, and I'm going to die. All of a sudden, your headache has turned into death. And I know for me, when worries start to snowball like that, it can be hard to stop them. And it doesn't matter that you think like, oh, this may not be totally rational. Sometimes it can be really hard to put on the brakes and stop that sort of snowballing effect, especially during a time like this. So worries are more likely to happen when you are in a situation that is unexpected, that is out of your control in a lot of ways, and that's new. And this is combining all three. So researchers have known for a long time that those are the things that cause most worries, and we're seeing all three of those combined nowadays. So taking a step back, let's think about that cough example. If I was to go to the grocery store now, and I heard somebody cough, it is helpful to me in some ways to think, oh man, I better keep my distance from them. Because there is a realistic reason to be worried at this moment about those things. And it is helpful for me to have a certain amount of worry and fear around this because it encourages my social distancing. It keeps me from, getting together 50 of my closest friends for a barbecue, right? Um, However, if my worry thought is, I can, now that I've heard somebody cough in this grocery store, I'm going to die. Or what if this person has it and now my entire family is affected, and oh my gosh, and it builds, then that's getting into an unhelpful area. And so worry serves a really nice purpose in some cases, but it doesn't in others. And so for us, it's important to split our thoughts into thinking about what is helpful and unhelpful, because something can be really true, but it can be unhelpful to dwell on. And so it's important to label your thoughts a little bit as you're sort of trying to confront them. So, for example, a helpful thought would be something that's really actionable, and it's something that you have a measure of control over. So, thinking, how am I going to pay my employees this week? What am I going to do about childcare for the next couple of months? How am I going to go about making sure my kids stay out of my hair while I'm on this webinar, right? Um, they are things that are difficult. They are things that don't have clear answers, and they are definitely going to preoccupy your thoughts, but you have some measure of control over them. You can think, you can brainstorm, you can work with someone on this, you can get help from a company like Generator, right? You can make a clear path forward. Whereas with an unhelpful thought, it's a hypothetical and it's out of your control. What if I get the virus and there are not enough ventilators? That is a thought that I've absolutely had. It's a thought that is really scary, but spending a ton of time worrying about it is unproductive, right? Unless I am a company that makes ventilators or I have some sort of in at the hospital, right? I have no control over that situation. And so by letting it go over and over in my mind, I'm not actually being productive. Sometimes worry can make us feel like, okay, we're planning for all contingencies, we've got this. And instead what it ends up doing is sort of like building that emotion in some ways and feeding that emotion, and affecting our behaviors. And so keeping us from engaging in the things that could be helpful. So say instead of going ahead and making sure that like I'm sending out the emails and making the edits to the work that I need to do, I spend 3 hours on the New York Times, right? Because I feel this level of control that's false when I spend time worrying repetitively over something like the news. So, one of the ways that you can think about how to manage the thoughts that you're having and sort of monitor them is by labeling them. So, noticing if you are falling into specific thinking traps. So, I'm going to cover just a few of these. If you, I have to say, like, you're not going to memorize like all of these thinking traps, but you can just Google and you'll find like lists of thinking traps. And it's sometimes really nice just to sort of like take a look at that list and think to yourself, like, wait, am I falling into any of these as I'm worrying about something? So one is fortune telling or catastrophizing. It's that assumption that you know exactly what's going to happen and that you know it's going to be bad. Um, None of us can see the future. If you can, then that would be very cool. But I certainly can't. And so being able to say like, oh, for sure, this is never going to happen, or all of this is, going to be the worst forever. It's you're putting out there a thought that you have about what the future is going to look like, but you don't know. Um, black and white thinking is related to that. So either everything is really great or everything is really terrible. We apply this to people a lot of times, thinking like, oh, well, that person didn't help me. They are a terrible person. I'm never going to get help from them ever again. I can't turn to them for anything. They are useless, right? And or you can think like, oh wow, my, this employee, they answered my email right away. They're the greatest person. They are on top of the world. Like I can rely on them for absolutely everything, right? It's a black and white dichotomy instead of seeing shades of gray when it comes to how things are going. And so that's important when we're thinking about filtering. So if you take a moment and take stock of your day, was it a good day? Was it a bad day? And sometimes making that sort of statement filters your recall of what it looked like. So we might be seeing previous events with rosy glasses, oh, well, at the beginning of this year, everything was perfect. I had nothing going wrong. Everything was so smooth and wonderful. And now everything is crap. It's all terrible. And we only recall the bad things that are happening during the day. So I could say, okay, I woke up and I couldn't leave the house, and my sister is also home with me, and so that's been really annoying, and yada, yada, yada. Or I could say, it was really annoying that my sister was here, but also I got to pet my cat for a long time, and my mom made me breakfast, so that was really cool and not something that usually happens for me. So sort of pulling in a couple of different things. Mind reading is the thinking trap of believing that you can understand what other people are thinking about you. And so this is the one that makes you feel socially anxious. Everybody else is thinking that I'm doing a terrible job with this webinar, right? And so be like projecting your own ideas onto other people without actually having evidence for or against. And generalization, this goes back to filtering. This is just sort of, the world is like this, everything is like this. It's just taking one moment and generalizing it out overall. And this is my personal favorite of the thinking traps. It's the one that I fall into the most in terms of perfectionism. So should statements. And should statements are your basic thing that includes should. So I should be working out more. I should be waking up earlier. Everyone else is, making beautiful sourdough bread on Instagram. I should be baking daily while I'm in quarantine, right? And so the idea that there's an ideal that you could reach and that you are constantly falling short. And so catching yourself when you say, I should have, or I should be, or I wish I was, you might not be engaging in, you may not be thinking about what it is that you are currently doing and keeping your mind as sort of the present moment and where your capabilities are right now. So these are just a couple of examples of how you could go about reframing. And I think one of the things that people sometimes don't like about reframing is they think this means I have to be sunshine and roses, that everything's not so bad. Let's just keep it posy. Let's just be optimistic. And it's not really about that so much as it is about, can I make this more of a helpful statement? Is this something that I could turn into something actionable for me so that I could actually make a change? Or is this something that I probably just need to shut down because it's an unhelpful thought and it's taking up a lot of my space that could be used for doing something more productive? And so in reframing, you are either making it really helpful for you so that you can go ahead and do something, or you're saying, you know what, this is something that is not going to be actionable, and so I just need to cope and start thinking about your coping plans for that. And we're going to talk about coping. But so here are a few examples of reframing. So here's a statement: I will never recover from the effects of this pandemic. That's some fortune telling, right? Some catastrophizing. So you could think it's going to take a lot of time and hard work before things stabilize. It's not exactly a happy thought. It's going to take a long time. I'm going to have to work incredibly hard. But if you are thinking of it that way, then it's about, okay, what kind of hard work can I do right now? How can I apply myself? Everything is going wrong. It's a black and white type of thinking. Instead, many things in my life are difficult, but I still have an awesome dog and love to go running, or I have 2 great kids, or whatever it is, thinking about, okay, there's a balance here. Things are terrible with the economy, but I have a roof over my head. And it doesn't need to be something big. It could be something small. And so thinking just about the gradations in that. And then I should be managing my stress better. It's a should statement. What about saying, I want to feel less stressed right now. What coping strategy can I try? So instead of feeling guilt or overwhelmed because you're not managing it the way you should be, it's about finding a new coping strategy that works for you. So let's talk about something that happens to me on a regular basis. I'm going about my day, my mental health is going well, and then I get a New York Times alert on my phone that's about something stressful. I can either think about how I want to reframe this. So, okay, this is bad news, but it's one piece of my day. Or I can change my behavior. I could turn off my New York Times alerts, or I could not read the article, or I could go ahead and do something else. And so we also want to be thinking about, all right, we can change our thoughts, we can examine them, but how can we adjust our behaviors as well? So let's talk about coping strategies. When we break down coping strategies, we think about problem versus emotion-focused coping, and you can follow this simple flowchart. First, you ask, okay, is there a problem? And the answer is yes. It goes back again to, is this something that I can control? Can I change this? If the answer is no, then we need to think about how do we manage our emotions by changing our behavior or adjusting our thoughts. If the answer is yes, I can change it, great. Let's start thinking about how we're going to do that with problem-focused coping. I also like the little bubble in between there that says, is now a good time to work on it? Because sometimes the problem comes up at 4 a.m, right? And so the question becomes, is this actually a good time to launch in, to send 500 emails, to try and contact everybody I can, to start Googling frantically? Or is this a time to say, all right, that's a problem for 7 a.m. Emily. Right now, 4 a.m. Emily needs to get 3 more hours of sleep. How can I work on that? So let's talk first about emotion-focused coping. These are a few of my emotion-focused coping strategies. The first being distraction, and here are some of my distractions. I've been doing Star Wars origami. I've been petting my cat a lot. I've been playing the game Animal Crossing. I don't know if any of you guys are into that. But doing things you enjoy is genuinely a coping strategy. It's something that you should be setting time aside for, that you should be finding ways to integrate into your life. And so finding time to take breaks and to unwind in a way that is undemanding and that you find distracting from the stressors that you're having is an important strategy for your coping. And so making sure that you are fitting in time for enjoyment into your day is really important. My cat is also currently sticking his paws under the door trying to join our webinar, so he's trying to enjoy himself too. Okay, so communication is also really important. So this is when you're relying on the people in your close network, your friends and your family, maybe your coworkers if you have a close relationship with some of them, but this is less about, okay, let's figure out strategies to deal with this, and more about just sharing the emotions that you're feeling. And it can be hard sometimes for us to label those, but it is very powerful to do so. So acknowledging and communicating to others that you feel a sense of stress or overwhelm or fear can just allow for space for that emotion to exist and for people to have just sort of a conversation about how they're feeling overall, and that can help alleviate it. We're going to talk a little bit about mindfulness or prayer. Mindfulness looks like a lot of different things to a lot of different people. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in the next slide. Exercise is a great emotion-focused coping. It gets you out there, it gets you distracted, it gets some endorphins going. And so it's a way to just deal with the emotion rather than coming at the problem right away. Journaling, I'm going to recommend a couple of journaling apps at the end of this for things just like recording down your emotions and a couple of thoughts that went with it, or you could be doing more comprehensive journaling, writing, just getting those thoughts out. Like I've talked about, changing the way you think. One thing that emotion-focused coping strategies can look like is some maladaptive behaviors, right? So increasing your drinking or your drug use, basically finding ways to suppress the emotions that you're experiencing. So when I talk about distraction, I don't mean that, okay, you feel angry, let's tamp that down. Let's not talk about this. Let's push it down, push it away, not address it. Because over time, as you push those emotions away or down, you are not giving them space to release. And so they're going to build up over and over and over again, and you're going to find yourself snapping at someone or just really like losing it for a little while because you haven't given space to the emotion before this. And so you might have a reaction that's much more intense than you might have expected otherwise. When it comes to alcohol and drug use, if you find yourself falling back on this over and over again on a regular basis, you can think to yourself like, okay, what am I not doing in my daily life that could be a coping strategy to help with this? And so that would be a time that you would want to talk with maybe a therapist, or you would want to sort of look for resources specific to it, because I think that it's important that we like acknowledge that while there's a culture around like, oh, it's a quarantine, drinking can begin whenever, sometimes our culture doesn't acknowledge that it can become problematic for some people. And so taking that seriously is just a note to sort of keep in the back of your mind when it comes to this. All right, so let's talk a little bit about mindfulness. Sometimes when people think of mindfulness, they have a very stereotyped view of what this might look like. It's going to be, sitting with your legs crossed and your hands like this, and you're going Om over and over again, or you're taking 30 minutes out of your day to sit and silently meditate. But mindfulness is something that you can actually very easily incorporate in very small doses into your day. And it can look like a lot of different things. It can be as simple as just taking a few deep breaths. So breathing in for 4 counts, holding it for 4 counts, out for 4 counts, holding it for 4 counts is that square breathing. So you're just sort of keeping it steady as you're moving around. It can be relaxation exercises. If you Google like meditation for relaxation, you can find things that'll relax your muscles progressively or something like that. It can also be about just sort of clearing your mind. This is great for when you've got those worry thoughts. So the way that I like to do it is I do a quick visualization. I think about if I was sitting on the bank of a stream and there are some leaves floating by in the stream. Every time I have a thought that crosses my mind, I just put it on the leaf and I watch it go. And that sort of gives me a visualization of what my thoughts might look like if I let them go rather than repeatedly worrying over them over and over again. And again, you're going to be able to find a lot of great resources for this. I'm also going to link to a couple of things at the end of the webinar. Mindful activity is also really great. I find that in general, my ability to engage in sort of like a mindfulness practice is not really great if I'm just sitting in a chair somewhere. My mind just wanders. And so instead, I'll do something like go for a walk and try and feel what my feet feel like on the pavement. Rather than say, listen to a podcast, which is a nice distraction, but isn't bringing me into the present moment in the way that mindfulness is. And so in a mindful activity, you are trying to make your whole mind full of just the activity that you're doing. So what does it feel like to be walking? What do my arms feel like next to me? What's my breathing like? What do my feet feel like on the ground? And you could do like a 5-minute walk that way, and it's a mindful activity. So this is an example of like a GIF that you might find that can help with your breathing exercises. I use these a lot, just to sort of like take a minute out of my day. I'll breathe along with it, and I will sort of see if that helped me calm my emotions. So really, the basics of mindfulness are making sure that you're paying attention to your breath, that you're labeling the emotions that are happening, and that you're doing it without judgment. So for example, if you are stressed about work, you would take a moment, follow something like this, or just do a little bit of slow breathing, and you might try and recognize what is the emotion that's going on. Okay, it's frustration with, someone in particular. And that's okay. This is an emotion that is common for a lot of people. It's an emotion that is going to happen throughout my day. And so I'm just acknowledging the emotion, and then I'm moving forward from it. So another way to think about this is the stop technique. So the stop technique, it's an acronym, and the S in stop is for stop. When you feel that emotion building up, you're going to stop, take a pause. You're going to take several deep breaths. It's the T. The O is for observe. This is when you're observing the emotion that you're having, but also noticing where in your body is this emotion living. So, okay, my neck is really tense. I haven't stood up in 2 hours. I haven't moved. Oh, I'm actually really hungry. Oh, I have a headache, right? So noticing in your body what actually is happening, in addition to the emotion that you're labeling. And then proceed. So, okay, what does this then lead me to do? Get up and walk around for a few minutes, go get a snack, email this one person that I've been putting off emailing because it's been stressful, right? Whatever it is, you can take away one action item from it, but by taking that moment to stop, then you are giving yourself a path moving forward. This is another strategy. It works for some people. It doesn't work for other people. So take it or leave it as it works for you. But some people like setting aside worry time. If you find yourself sort of obsessively going through this stuff over and over again, you could say to yourself, you know what, that's for my worry time. And you could say from 5 to 5:15 tonight, that's when I'm going to worry about this. Sometimes people think, I'm not going to remember what it is. Feel free to write it down. Sometimes that helps in sort of getting the thought out of your head. You can keep a Post-it note that's like my worry thoughts, and you can put it next to your desk, put it behind your computer when you're not working on it. It can sort of provide a finality to the cycle that you might get stuck in your worries, by saying like, nope, I'm putting this off for later. And then when you are in the worry time, when you reach the end of it, you also have to have that finality to it. For me, I feel like sometimes I don't fully notice that I'm in a worry spiral at first, and so it takes a little while, and so then this can help sort of say like, okay, wait, I'm in a worry spiral right now. Let's put this off for another time and get back to what it was that I was doing. And so by having a worry time set aside, it's useful for compartmentalizing a little bit when it comes to that. All right, so those are emotion-focused coping strategies, and there's a lot to them. And I think, in general, a lot of what we are having to do right now is emotion-focused coping because there's so much that's out of our control and is uncertain. But at the same time, there's a lot that we can be doing, right? So problem-focused coping strategies are basically figuring out how can I adjust my behavior to attack the thing that is worrying me at the moment. So this can include brainstorming. And I think sometimes people with brainstorming think, okay, this might be me projecting, but all of my ideas have to be really good. I need to be on top of it. I need to be generating a lot of things. I will sort of give myself permission to come up with just the most ridiculous solutions to things. I work a lot with kids, and so I'll do a lot of, when we're brainstorming various solutions, say for a problem that they're having with a teacher, we'll include on the list things like scream at the teacher's face, run away from school and never come back, bring in your pet monkey so that she can attack the teacher, right? So you're just coming up with, and then at the same time, you're also bringing in every possible way that you could come at it, because then you can consider the genuine pros and cons of what it is that you're deciding on doing. But you can do it in a way that feels a little bit less like, this decision is life or death. The decision I make is the one that has to be done. It instead can be, okay, there are a lot of possibilities that I can consider. And they are all equally valid in this moment, and then we can start paring them down over time. Time management is certainly one of the things that can help with problem-focused coping skills. If you are taking too much on, thinking about how you can manage your time more effectively. There are plenty of apps for that. I feel like I'm going back to apps a lot, but I use them. And organization, same thing. I'm not going to go into these a lot just because that's not my area of expertise. But there's certainly a lot that is out there that can help with managing those types of things. And then consultation. This is where your communication would be less about, I'm feeling a lot of fear, and more about what kind of strategies should I be pursuing. This is when you are reaching out for help from other folks. This is when you're attending webinars. This is when you're educating yourself and you are getting the information that can help you address the problem that you directly need help with. So if we think about addressing behaviors to reduce your stress, setting boundaries is a big one. So saying no to the things that you cannot do, and going ahead and making sure that you are not taking on more than is reasonable for you to take on. Making sure that you're scheduling in breaks and practicing good sleep hygiene, not trying to work 24 hours a day, not trying to push through and do 8 hours in a row, not getting up, not eating regular meals, making sure that you are just taking care of yourself. It's called sleep hygiene in psychology. I realize that's not actually a term that most people use, but sleep hygiene has to do with like making sure that you're not holding your phone in front of your face before you go to bed, watching TV, that you're going to bed at sort of a regular time and that you have a routine going on. Those are all things that can help with insomnia. And maintaining a schedule just in general, regular time to wake up, regular time to go to bed. Those are things that sort of like give your mind a cue that things are basically normal and we don't need to be in a constant fight or flight kind of panic mode. So by engaging in these behaviors, you are helping yourself, you're putting yourself in a place for success when it comes to going ahead and engaging with the work that you need to do. So just a little bit about building a workplace with mental health in mind. I think it's really important to consider that as entrepreneurs, as the people who are creating these businesses, you are the one who's creating the culture as well, right? So it comes from the top down when it comes to how much should we be working, how open are we with our struggles with something like anxiety over getting a job done or frustration with running into roadblocks in the job. If you are creating the space for an open dialogue to occur between you and your employees, then you're giving them the space to engage in all the behaviors that we've just been talking about, that you're giving them room for mental health to be part of the conversation and for issues to come up more naturally and before they become a bigger deal, right? So making sure that you are using open communication about the concerns that you have, that you're being honest about the strategies that you're using in this time, and what it is that you are trying best to do for them. a lot of times it can feel like, okay, well, I don't have everything together. I'm not fully ready to let people know what my strategy is because I'm still figuring it out. And if you're not communicating that to your employees, they're going to assume the worst. They're going to think, oh, he's not working on this at all, or she has no ideas for what we're going to do, or she's about to fire me and I'm going to have no warning at all that anything is happening, right? And so by you saying, I've applied for this loan, we're considering the possibility of letting people go, but we're going to be trying to do everything we can not to make that happen, right? Whatever it is that you are doing as your strategy, being relatively open about that helps reduce anxiety in your workforce. You can also be setting clear and reasonable expectations for them in this time. So in the same way that you need to be thinking, okay, what am I expecting of myself in this very stressful moment? Making sure that those expectations are really clear for your employees is helpful, because that also reduces stress. Okay, I know that I'm supposed to work X number of hours, that I need to get this, this, and this done, and that in that case, this is what I can rely on from my job to the best of your ability, right? There's not going to be one perfect way to do this, and it's not going to be set in stone. This is just a time where a lot of flexibility can occur. As much as you can, granting autonomy is really important too. I have a few friends who I know have gone through an experience where they had relative autonomy at home, at work, and now they've gone home and all of a sudden there are a lot of rigid structures in place. They have to be reporting what they're doing every second of the day. And so finding a balance between making sure that you're keeping people on track, but also giving them the ability to say like, yeah, no, I'm a hard worker. I want to be contributing to this. It's important. And so granting the autonomy that you can and providing the flexibility that you can makes your employees feel empowered, makes them feel like they are contributing to the work, and are not just sort of replaceable pegs in that work. And finally, labeled praise. This is just something that I love for both work and family and raising kids. It's about finding the things that you like and making sure that you are very specific in praising them. So thinking about, oh my gosh, Emily is so fast at responding to emails. She is always on top of that. Making sure that you take a second and be like, I just really appreciate how responsive you've been, right? It's a small thing, but finding things to praise is going to increase motivation tenfold, in that a lot of people are going to, it's a lot easier to be like, hey, you haven't been responding to my emails recently, right? To criticize rather than praise. So the last thing that I want to talk about is just what are the expectations that you have for yourself? This is just bringing it back again to being kind to yourself. I love this quote from Brene Brown: when perfectionism is driving us, shame is always riding shotgun, and fear is the backseat driver. So when you are starting to get stressed, try and consider some questions like, what shoulds are you saying to yourself? Have you defined that there's a right way and a wrong way to be doing work during this pandemic, which is a completely novel, new thing that nobody has experienced before, and that there may not be one structured way through? And are there feelings of guilt and shame you're experiencing because you're taking on a role that says, I need to be perfect in this situation and I don't have space to allow myself to make mistakes, to struggle, to have uncertainty and make space for that uncertainty in my life, because everybody's in an uncertain place, even when there isn't a pandemic. And so being able to grant yourself a little bit of leeway is going to go a long way for helping reduce those feelings of fear and shame. So these are just a couple of resources. Some websites. I love mindful.org. They have a whole page now on resources of dealing with stress during COVID-19. They have a short video you can watch on the stop technique. They've got a bunch of guided meditations. They're fantastic. There are apps like the Calm app or mood tracking apps. If you're finding that this is something that is sending you into more of a spiral than you usually have experienced, if you're somebody who has struggled with depression or anxiety, and this is something that is boosting that, I would absolutely recommend seeing about finding some sort of therapeutic help right now. So there are a lot of new programs like BetterHelp and Talkspace, which offer virtual therapy sessions. Psychology Today has a great list of therapists in your area. You can talk to them if they're doing distance work. And I also recommend, if you live near a local university, they often have a psychological services center where their students are offering therapy at a much reduced price. I did this as a student. I really enjoyed it, and I was able to work with people who may not have been able to afford therapy services otherwise. I also have here a list of the suicide prevention hotline, which I just feel like needs to always be out there for folks. And then the crisis text line. You can text help to 741-741, and they'll have a human respond to you very quickly. And you can talk about any crisis that you're having. This does not need to be at a level of considering hurting yourself, but rather, I'm feeling just an overwhelming amount of stress and I need help coming up with coping strategies at this time. And they're really great. So that's what I have for you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. That was great. We do have a couple of questions, so I'm going to go ahead and read those off for you. Okay, so the first question is, in regards to taking breaks, during this time, we're in high gear right now, serving the needs of others. Management hasn't really encouraged taking breaks. How would you suggest having a conversation about this?
It's a really good question. I think going to them with specific reasons and a time frame in mind can be helpful when it comes to communication about this. So saying to them, I find that after 3 hours, I just need a little bit of time to de-stress, grab a cup of coffee, and go for and have a quick stretch before I dive back in. I think that'll really help me be more focused, be more on top of it. Can I schedule this here and here, right? And so I always think, rather than putting it on them, saying, you haven't been giving me breaks, or this is really, overwhelming. Being honest about the emotions you're feeling, but also coming up with a reasonable plan that you think might be helpful in that case. So I hope that's helpful.
Awesome. And then the next question is, what strategies would you recommend in helping a friend who is struggling and being negative during these times without just telling them that it's going to be okay?
It's a really great question too. So when I have that happen with my friends, I'll sometimes say to them, I hear you. I feel overwhelmed as well. So making sure that first you're acknowledging and you're reflecting back what it is that they're feeling, right? So, okay, I show you that I'm listening because this is what you've been saying. You've talked about work and school and your family and these things. And you say, oh, it sounds like things are really overwhelming for these reasons. And then I will say, what have you been doing to take care of yourself? And that can sometimes spark a conversation about the coping strategies that have worked for them and things that they might want to try. Sometimes people just want a listening ear. And so you can also ask that. You can say, do you want to try and brainstorm some ideas about what we can do about this? Or do you just need me to listen? And if there's somebody who really likes to vent, I have a friend who will text me with every venting emotion that she has, and I end up putting up a couple of boundaries around it. So I'll say, happy to listen to you vent for the next 5 minutes, and then I have to go make dinner, right? So putting up boundaries around myself if that negativity is getting really intense for me. Oh, I think you're on mute still.
Thank you. And then the next question is, what is the best way to be a friend to others during the social distancing existence?
Such a good question. I've been trying a few different things, and I'm sure that other people have ideas. I've been doing a lot of Zoom sessions. Obviously, I've been doing the Netflix watch-alongs. Been playing Animal Crossing. You get to visit each other's villages. I also have just been making sure that I'm reaching out to folks on a more regular basis. I have one friend who was awesome. She wrote a bunch of like handwritten notes to everybody. It just sort of is nice to sort of know that even though everybody's apart, they're thinking about each other. And so if you are feeling that if you're feeling isolated in this moment, chances are other people are as well. And so just sort of reaching out, even if it's a group text chain. I've been watching Westworld on Sunday nights with friends and then texting on a group text thread the whole time through. We wait and we press play together. It's sort of small things like that that I've been doing. I don't know that there's one way to do it, but I like that there's been specific events that people have been putting on, streaming various musicals and things like that, because then there's sort of event watching for people to do together. So yeah.
Great. And then the last question is, do you mind if we share your contact information?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to have that.
All right. Well, that concludes our questions. And I think that wraps up our presentation. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Emily, thank you again for doing this webinar. This was really awesome. This was incredibly thorough, and we really appreciate it. And I'm sure the folks on the other end appreciate it as well. So thank you. I appreciate that. Oh, I think we have
thank you guys for having me.
Prentice, do you see if there's one more question? I think I see a notification.
Yes. Oh, do you want to read it?
Yeah, I can't click it for some reason.
The question is, although there are plenty of negative drawbacks that have arisen from working from home, are there any positives that may come from this unique situation?
I think that's a really nice way to reframe this, right? There are, I think, some positive things that we can take away. I know that for some people, having the flexibility of working at home has been really valuable for them, that they've enjoyed the process of being closer to family, not having a commute, having the flexibility to make their own schedule if maybe they didn't have that flexibility so much in the office. And so you can make that personal to yourself. You can find the things that you are really enjoying out of this experience. For me, I'm 30 years old. I haven't lived with my parents in 8-9 years. And so the closeness with my family has been something that I've been really appreciating. And it goes back to sort of that black and white thinking, right? It can be either this is really terrible, everything is bad because I have to shift the way that I'm working, or it can go into something that's a little bit more gray and has room for both the good and the bad.
And then Prentice, do you see one more question, or is it?
It was a comment, so we're good to go. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, well, that wraps up our webinar then. Thank you all for joining us today. As I mentioned earlier, this is our last webinar for the week under the Alabama Emergency Response Program. But we will be shooting out these recorded webinars to all the folks that are registered for this program. And we do have some office hours open today. So if you do have any other questions, feel free to join the office hours. You can find them on our website, and I know Prentice has been sending them out via email as well. But Emily, thank you again. This was great. And thank you all, and have a good weekend.
You too. Have a good weekend.
Bye, everyone.